There is a saying in high society, "Money talks, but wealth whispers." But for Isabella Thorne, wealth didn't whisper, it screamed. She believed her diamond-encrusted finger gave her the divine right to crush anyone beneath her. She thought the exhausted pregnant waitress trembling before her was just another insect to be squashed. She thought she could get away with the slap that echoed through the finest restaurant in Manhattan. But she made one fatal calculation. She didn't know that the unborn child inside that waitress's belly held the key to $1 billion empire, and that her own husband was about to become her executioner. This is the story of how an arrogant socialite lost everything in a single heartbeat. The rain battered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Le Grand Manhattan's most exclusive dining establishment. Situated on the 45th floor of a skyscraper overlooking Central Park, the restaurant was a sanctuary of gold-leaf velvet and the soft, murmuring hum of billionaires making deals. Inside, the air smelled of truffle oil, expensive cognac, and fear. Sarah Miller adjusted the waistband of her black maternity trousers. They were 2 sizes too small, digging into her hips, but she couldn't afford new ones. At 7 months pregnant, her ankles were swollen to the size of grapefruits, and her lower back throbbed with a dull, rhythmic ache that synced with her heartbeat. "Table 4 needs water, Sarah. Move it," hissed Marcus, the floor manager. Marcus was a thin, weaselly man who wore a suit that was too shiny and cologne that smelled like desperate ambition. He hated Sarah. He hated that she was slow. He hated that she was pregnant, and he hated that he couldn't legally fire her without a lawsuit. "I'm going, Marcus," Sarah whispered, grabbing the crystal pitcher. Her hands shook slightly. She hadn't eaten since breakfast a single slice of toast, so she could save her tips for the baby's crib. She waddled toward table 4, the power table, in the center of the room. Sitting there like a queen holding court was Isabella Thorne. Isabella was beautiful in the way a glaciers are beautiful, cold, sharp, and dangerous. She wore a vintage Chanel dress that cost more than Sarah would earn in 5 years. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a severe bun, highlighting the sharp angles of her cheekbones. On her wrist sat a Patek Philippe watch, encrusted with diamonds, ticking away time that she clearly felt she owned. She was surrounded by her court, 2 other socialites, Tiffany and Claire, who laughed shrilly at everything Isabella said. "So I told the architect," Isabella's voice cut through the ambient jazz, "if you can't source the marble from the same quarry Michelangelo used, don't bother building the pool house. I don't want domestic stone touching my skin." The women cackled. Sarah approached the table, keeping her eyes lowered. The rule at Le Grand was to be invisible. Service was to be felt, not seen. "Water, madam?" Sarah asked softly. Isabella didn't look up. She just tapped her empty crystal goblet with a manicured fingernail, the sound ringing out like a command. Sarah leaned in. The baby kicked hard against her ribs, a sudden sharp jolt. Sarah gasped involuntarily, her hand jerking. A tiny splash of ice water, no more than a teaspoon, escaped the pitcher and landed on the white tablecloth, just inches from Isabella's Hermes clutch. The silence that followed was instant and terrifying. Isabella slowly turned her head. Her eyes, the color of frozen blue glass, traveled from the water spot up to Sarah's face. "You clumsy cow," Isabella said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried across the room. "I'm so sorry, Mom," Sarah stammered, grabbing the napkin from her apron. The baby kicked. I lost my balance for a second. I'll change the cloth immediately." "The baby," Isabella scoffed, looking at Sarah's stomach with unmasked disgust. "Is that the excuse for incompetence these days, breeding?" Sarah froze. Her face burned. I'm sorry." "Look at you." Isabella sneered, her voice rising, now drawing the attention of the surrounding tables. "You're disgusting. You're sweating. You smell like stale grease and poverty. How does Legrand allow something like you to serve food? It puts me off my appetite." "Isabella, leave it." Tiffany giggled nervously, sensing the tension. "No," Isabella snapped. She stood up. She was tall, looming over Sarah. "This is $1,000 clutch. Do you know how much $1,000 is? It's probably what you make in a month." "I didn't touch the bag, Mom," Sarah said, her voice trembling, tears pricking her eyes. "It's just the cloth." "Don't you dare talk back to me," Isabella hissed. "You ruined my evening. You ruined the ambiance. You are a blight on this establishment." Isabella picked up her glass of red wine, a 1998 Chateau Margaux. "You want to clean something up?" Isabella smiled a cruel, twisted expression. She poured the red wine over Sarah's white uniform. The cold liquid soaked through the fabric, instantly staining the white shirt, blood red, clinging to her pregnant belly. The entire restaurant gasped. Sarah stood there, shock rendering her immobile. The wine dripped down her trousers into her worn-out shoes. "Now you match the decor." Isabella laughed. Something inside Sarah snapped. It wasn't pride she had lost that months ago. It was a protective instinct. This woman was attacking her child's mother. "You are a horrible person," Sarah whispered. Isabella's eyes went wide. "Excuse me," I said. Sarah raised her voice, shaking. "You are a miserable, horrible person. No amount of money covers up how ugly you are inside." Isabella didn't think. She reacted. She swung her hand. Crack! The sound was sickeningly loud. Isabella's palm adorned with a heavy diamond ring connected with Sarah's cheek. The force of the blow knocked Sarah backward. Her feet, slick with the spilled wine, slipped. Sarah fell. She crashed onto the hard marble floor, landing hard on her side, her hands instinctively wrapping around her stomach to protect the baby. "Oh my God!" a diner screamed. Sarah lay on the floor, dazed. A sharp, metallic taste filled her mouth. Blood trickled from a cut on her cheekbone where the ring had sliced the skin. Isabella stood over her, breathing, hard-looking, not at the pregnant woman she had just assaulted, but at her own hand. "Ow!" she complained. "I think I chipped a nail." Marcus, the manager, came running, but he didn't run to Sarah. He ran to Isabella. Mrs. Thorne, I am so devastatingly sorry." Marcus groveled, practically bowing. "Are you all right? Did she hurt you?" Sarah struggled to sit up, wheezing. Help," she gasped. "My stomach." "Get her out of here." Isabella pointed at Sarah like she was a bag of trash. "She assaulted me verbally, and look at the mess she made." Marcus turned to Sarah, his face twisting into a scowl. "You are fired. Get out. Now. Before I call the police for disturbing the peace." "But she hit me," Sarah cried, holding her cheek. "I saw nothing," Marcus said coldly. "I saw a clumsy waitress slip and fall after insulting a VIP guest. Now get out or security will drag you out." Sarah looked around the room. Dozens of wealthy patrons stared at her. Some looked pitying, but most looked away, unwilling to get involved with the wife of Julian Thorne. Julian Thorne, the billionaire industrialist who owned half the city. Nobody crossed the Thorne family. Nobody except one young man at a corner table wearing a hoodie and holding up his phone. He hadn't looked away. He had been recording for the last 3 minutes. Sarah dragged herself up. Humiliated, bleeding, and terrified for her baby, she turned and limped toward the service exit. "And take the trash with you," Isabella yelled after her kicking Sarah's dropped notepad. As the kitchen doors swung shut behind Sarah, Isabella sat back down, smoothing her dress. "Waiter." She called out, her voice calm as if nothing had happened. "I'll need another glass of wine. And bring the dessert menu. I've worked up an appetite." Sarah didn't go home. She couldn't. She sat on a wet bench at the bus stop 3 blocks away from Le Grand, shielding her stomach from the rain with her arms. The wine had dried into a sticky, cold mess on her skin. The cut on her cheek throbbed. She was 24 years old, widowed, and now unemployed. "It's okay, Peanut," she whispered to her belly, stroking it. "Mummy will figure it out. Mummy always figures it out." But deep down, she knew she was running out of time. She wasn't just any waitress. She was Sarah Evans, and the baby inside her wasn't just any baby. The father of her child was Liam Thorne, Julian Thorne's younger brother. Liam had been the black sheep of the family. He had rejected the billions, the corporate lifestyle, and the cruelty of his family name to become an artist. He and Sarah had married in secret 2 years ago. They had been happy living in a small studio in Brooklyn, far away from the toxic reach of the Thorne dynasty. Then came the motorcycle accident. 6 months ago. Liam died instantly. Sarah survived, but she lost the love of her life. When she went to the Thorne family to tell them about Liam's death and the baby she had been intercepted by Isabella, Isabella had met her at the gates of the Thorne estate. She had told Sarah that Julian hated Liam, that he wanted nothing to do with the tramp he married, and that if Sarah ever tried to contact Julian, Isabella would use their team of lawyers to destroy her. Sarah believed her. She didn't know that Julian Thorne had never stopped looking for his brother. She didn't know that Isabella had intercepted Liam's letters for years. So Sarah fled. She took her maiden name, Miller, and took a job waiting tables, terrified that the Thornes would come and take her baby away if they found her. She had no idea that fate had just put her directly in the path of the monster she feared most. Meanwhile, across the city, in a penthouse overlooking the Hudson River, Julian Thorne sat in his study. Julian was 42, with salt and pepper hair and eyes that looked like they had seen too much and felt too little. He was the CEO of Thorne Enterprises, a man who could crash the stock market with a single tweet. But tonight he was just a tired man drinking scotch. His marriage to Isabella was a business arrangement, a merger of 2 massive family fortunes. There was no love, only shared assets and public appearances. He tolerated her vanity because it kept the press off his back. His phone buzzed. It was his personal attorney, Michael Vance. "It's midnight, Mike," Julian grumbled. "Unless the Tokyo market crashed, this better be good." "You need to check your email." "Julian." Michael's voice was tense. "Or just open Twitter. It's trending." "Le Grand Assault." "Isabella." Julian sighed, rubbing his temples. What did she do now? Insult a designer, buy a zoo. Worse, much worse. Just watch the video. Julian opened the link. The video was shaky but high definition. It showed the interior of Le Grand. He saw Isabella. He saw the pregnant waitress. He watched Isabella pour the wine. He watched the humiliation. And then he watched the slap. Julian flinched. He was a ruthless businessman, but he wasn't physically violent. Seeing his wife strike a pregnant woman made bile rise in his throat. "Get Marcus on the phone," Julian said, his voice low and dangerous. "There's more, Julian," Michael said. "Look at the waitress. Pause the video at the 042 mark. Look at the necklace she's wearing. It falls out of her shirt when she hits the ground." Julian paused the video. He zoomed in. It was a simple silver chain with a unique pendant, a small, rough-cut piece of lapis lazuli wrapped in silver wire. Julian dropped his glass of scotch. It shattered on the floor, amber liquid soaking into the Persian rug. He knew that necklace. He had made it. 30 years ago, when he and Liam were boys, they had found that stone on a camping trip. Julian had wrapped it in wire and given it to Liam as a protection charm when Liam ran away from home at 18. "Keep this, little brother." so you always remember who has your back." Liam never took it off. Julian stared at the screen, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. That waitress was wearing Liam's necklace. "Find her," Julian whispered, his voice cracking. "I'm already on it," Michael said. "The internet sleuths are fast, but we are faster. Her name on the payroll is Sarah Miller. Address is a rundown apartment in Queens. And Isabella? She's currently at the after party at the Ritz. She has no idea this video is out yet." Julian stood up. A cold, terrifying calm washed over him. The fatigue was gone. In its place was the burning, focused rage of a titan who had just realized his castle had been invaded by a snake. "Don't tell Isabella anything," Julian commanded. "Cancel my meetings for tomorrow. Get the car ready." "Where are we going, sir?" "Queens," Julian said, grabbing his coat. "And then I'm going to destroy my wife." The Rolls-Royce Phantom looked like a spaceship landed in the middle of a war zone. It idled silently on a cracked street in Queens, surrounded by overflowing dumpsters and rusted sedans. Julian Thorne stared out the tinted window. Rain blurred the streetlights into streaks of neon and grime. He hadn't set foot in a neighborhood like this in 20 years. Not since he and Liam had started their first company in a garage before the distance grew between them. "This is the address, sir," Michael said from the front seat. "Apartment 4B. The building has been condemned twice in the last decade, but the landlord keeps paying off the inspectors." Julian felt a sharp stab in his chest. His brother's wife, his brother's child, living here, while Isabella spent $50,000 on floral arrangements that died in 3 days. "Stay here," Julian ordered. He stepped out into the rain. He didn't bother with an umbrella. The cold water felt necessary, like a penance. He walked into the building. The lobby smelled of boiled cabbage and mildew. The elevator was out of order, taped off with yellow caution tape. Julian climbed the 4 flights of stairs. His Italian leather shoes clicked against the concrete, a foreign rhythm in this place of silence and struggle. He reached door 4B. He could hear sobbing inside. He raised his hand and knocked. 3 sharp raps. The sobbing stopped instantly. "Go away." Sarah's voice came through the thin wood, trembling with terror. "I don't have the rent yet, Mr. Henderson. Please just give me 2 more days." "I'm not the landlord," Julian said. His voice was deep, authoritative, but he tried to soften it. "Sarah, my name is Julian Thorne." Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. Then the sound of a chain rattling. The door cracked open 2 inches. One terrified green eye peered out. "Thorne," she whispered. Then realization hit her. Her eye went wide. She tried to slam the door. No, please, I won't tell anyone, I promise, don't take the baby." Julian jammed his foot in the door. It was an aggressive move, but he couldn't let her close him out. "Sarah, stop. I'm not here to take the baby. I'm not here to hurt you." "Isabella sent you," Sarah cried, pressing her weight against the door. "She said you'd destroy me. She said you hated Liam." Julian froze. "She said what? Go away." "Sarah." Julian said, his voice cracking. "I saw the necklace." The pressure on the door eased slightly. "The lapis lazuli," Julian said, speaking fast, now desperate. "Wrapped in silver wire. We found it in the Catskills when we were 12. Liam fell into the creek trying to get it. I wrapped it for him because he was afraid he'd lose it. I told him it was a compass, so he'd always find his way back to me." The door slowly opened. Sarah stood there. She was still wearing the stained uniform from Le Grand, though she had tried to scrub the wine out with a wet rag. Her cheek was purple and swollen, where Isabella's ring had connected. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but around her neck, hanging loosely, was the stone. Julian looked at her, and then he looked at the small, cramped studio apartment behind her. A mattress on the floor, a single hot plate, a bucket catching water from a leak in the ceiling, and on the bedside table, a framed photo of Liam. Julian felt his knees weaken. He walked past her, into the room, drawn to the photo like a moth to a flame. He picked it up. Liam was smiling in the photo, paint-splattered, holding Sarah. "He never hated you," Sarah said softly, closing the door. She wrapped her arms around her belly defensively. "He talked about you every day. He wrote you letters, dozens of them, asking to meet, asking to introduce me." Julian turned around his face, pale. "I never received a single letter." "But Isabella said—" Sarah trailed off. "She said you burned them. She said you called Liam a failure." "Isabella." Julian growled the name, tasting like poison in his mouth. She intercepted them. The reality of the betrayal washed over him. His wife hadn't just assaulted a waitress. She had systematically severed the bond between him and his only brother. She had let Liam die, thinking Julian despised him. And now she had left Liam's widow to rot in poverty while she drank vintage wine. Julian looked at Sarah. He saw the fear still lingering in her eyes. "Sarah," he said, stepping closer. He didn't look like a billionaire CEO anymore. He looked like a grieving brother. "I didn't know. I swear to you on Liam's grave I didn't know." Sarah looked at him, searching for the lie, but she found only raw pain. Her defenses crumbled. She let out a sob, her legs giving way. Julian caught her. He held her up, her head, resting on his expensive soaked wool coat. "I'm sorry," she wept. "I'm so scared. I have nothing. I don't know how I'm going to feed this baby." "That ends now," Julian said firmly. "You are a thorn, and that baby is the future of my family." He pulled away and looked her in the eyes. "Pack a bag," he commanded gently. "Anything you want to keep. You are never spending another second in this place." "Where are we going?" "Home," Julian said. "And then we are going to war." The sun rose over Manhattan, oblivious to the chaos brewing below. In the master suite of the Thorne penthouse, Isabella Thorne woke up with a headache. She reached for the bell cord to summon her maid Maria for coffee and aspirin. "Maria," she called out, "where is my breakfast?" No answer. Isabella groaned and sat up. The silk sheets felt hot and uncomfortable. She grabbed her phone from the nightstand to check her social media. She expected to see praise for her outfit last night, maybe a few mentions in Vogue or Tatler. Instead, her notifications were broken. Her Instagram had 500,000 new comments. Her Twitter mentions were scrolling so fast she couldn't read them. She clicked on one. "Eat the rich, Isabella Thorne is a monster. Look at how she treats a pregnant woman. Le Grand Assault. Boycott Thorne, I justice for Sarah. I hope she goes to jail. Assaulting a pregnant woman is a felony. Disgusting." Isabella frowned. "What is this nonsense?" She opened the trending tab. The video was #1 worldwide. She watched it. The angle was unflattering. It showed her face twisted in a snarl. It showed the slap clearly. "That bitch," Isabella muttered, throwing the phone onto the bed. "She set me up. She probably hired someone to film it." She wasn't worried about the morality of what she had done. In Isabella's world, morality was for poor people. She was worried about the optics. She dialed Marcus, the manager of Le Grand. "Marcus," she barked as soon as he answered. "Why hasn't this been taken down? I pay a retainer to that restaurant specifically for discretion. Mrs. Thorne." Marcus's voice was high-pitched and panic-stricken. I can't take it down. It's everywhere. CNN just called. The police are asking for the security footage." "Delete it," Isabella ordered. "Wipe the servers. Tell them the system malfunctioned." I already gave it to them, Marcus whimpered. You what? Isabella screamed. The district attorney called me personally, Mrs. Thorne. They threatened me. With obstruction of justice, I had no choice. Isabella hung up. Her hands were shaking. This was getting out of hand. She needed Julian. Julian would fix this. He always fixed things. He would buy the police, buy the judge, buy the news station. She dialed Julian's number. Straight to voicemail. She called his office. No answer. Where the hell is he? She hissed. She got out of bed and paced the room. She needed to get ahead of this. If Julian wasn't answering, she had to handle it herself. She needed to silence the girl. Everyone had a price. That waitress looked like she hadn't eaten a decent meal in years. $50,000 would probably look like a fortune to her. Isabella grabbed her burner phone, the one she used for things she didn't want traceable. She scrolled to a contact, simply labeled Gareth. Gareth was a private investigator who specialized in reputation management. In reality, he was a thug in a suit who dug up dirt and intimidated people into silence. Gareth, Isabella said, her voice regaining its icy composure. I have a problem, a little pest in Queens. Her name is Sarah Miller. I saw the video, Izzy, Gareth's gravelly voice replied. Nasty right hook. You're in deep this time. Spare me the commentary. I want her found. I want you to go to her. Offer her $50,000 to sign an NDA and recant her story. Tell her she needs to say she slipped and I was trying to help her up. And if she refuses, then remind her that single mothers have a very hard time in this city, Isabella said, examining her nails. Accidents happen. Apartments catch fire. CPS gets anonymous tips about unfit mothers. Make her understand that fighting me is a suicide mission. You want me to threaten a pregnant broad? Gareth asked, sounding skeptical. I want you to solve my problem, Gareth. That's what I pay you for. Just get it done. Tonight. Isabella hung up and smiled. Control. She was back in control. She walked into her massive walk-in closet and chose a white dress. White projected innocence. She would issue a statement later, something about context and being under extreme stress. She went downstairs to the main living area. The penthouse was quiet. Too quiet. Julian, she called out. She walked into the dining room. Sitting at the head of the table was Julian. He was still wearing his suit from the day before, rumpled and damp. He hadn't shaved. His eyes were dark circles of exhaustion, but they burned with an intensity that made Isabella pause. There you are, Isabella said, putting on her best pout. I have been calling you all morning. Have you seen the lies people are spreading about me? It's horrific. You need to call the legal team immediately. Julian didn't speak. He just watched her. Julian, she asked, stepping closer. Why are you looking at me like that? Julian reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small object and placed it gently on the mahogany table. It was a crumpled, yellowed envelope, unopened, addressed to Julian Thorne. Isabella stopped dead. The blood drained from her face. She recognized the handwriting instantly. It was Liam's. I found this, Julian said, his voice terrifyingly quiet, in your vanity drawer, hidden under the false bottom. Julian, I can explain, Isabella stammered, her heart hammering against her ribs. Liam, he was unstable. I was trying to protect you. He only wanted money. And the other letters? Julian asked, standing up slowly. The dozens of letters Sarah told me about. Where are those, Isabella? Did you burn them? Sarah. Isabella's eyes widened. You spoke to her. I did, Julian said. He walked around the table until he was standing inches from her. He towered over her. For the first time in their marriage, Isabella felt truly small. I know everything, Isabella. I know about the letters. I know you turned my brother away at the gate. I know you left his widow to starve. She's a gold digger, Isabella shrieked, panic taking over. She seduced him. She's trash, Julian. She's nothing. She is family, Julian roared. The sound echoed off the walls, shaking the crystal chandelier. She is carrying my brother's child. She is a thorn, Isabella recoiled, trembling. I'm going to fix this, Julian said, his voice dropping back to a deadly whisper. But not the way you want. What are you going to do? Tonight, Julian said, is the annual Thorn Foundation Gala. The press will be there. The board will be there. All of New York society. Yes, Isabella nodded desperately. We can use the gala. We can present a united front. Show them we are a happy family. Julian smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a wolf looking at a trapped rabbit. Exactly, Julian said. We will put on a show. Go get ready, Isabella. Wear your best jewels. I want you to look perfect when the world sees who you really are. He turned and walked out of the room. Isabella stood there, shaking. She didn't understand. Was he helping her? Or was he planning something else? Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was Gareth. Izzy, Gareth said. I'm at the girl's apartment. It's empty, cleared out. Neighbors say a guy in a Rolls-Royce picked her up 2 hours ago. Isabella dropped the phone. Julian had her. While Isabella was plotting her survival in the penthouse, Julian had taken Sarah to the presidential suite at the Pierre Hotel. It was a sanctuary of cream-colored walls, soft carpets, and a view of Central Park that stretched for miles. But for Sarah, the most luxurious thing wasn't the view or the furniture. It was the feeling of safety. A private doctor had just finished examining her. The baby is stressed and your blood pressure is high, Dr. Aris said, packing his bag. But you are both strong. You need rest food and peace. She will have all of that, Julian promised, standing by the window. Once the doctor left, a team of stylists entered. They didn't look like the snooty staff at Legrand. They were quiet, respectful, and moved with military precision. Mr. Thorne ordered a wardrobe for you, ma'am. The head stylist, a woman named Eleanor, said gently. She wheeled in a rack of clothes. There were no flashy logos, no garish prints. Just cashmere, silk, and wool in soft, calming tones. Sarah touched a soft grey sweater. I can't accept this. I can't pay you back. Julian turned from the window. You don't pay family back, Sarah. Liam owned 15% of Thorne Enterprises. Do you know what that means? Sarah shook her head. He never talked about money. He said it was poison. It's not poison if you use it to build instead of destroy, Julian said. That 15% is worth roughly $400 million. It belongs to you. It has always belonged to you. You aren't a charity case, Sarah. You're one of the wealthiest women in this room. Sarah sat down on the plush sofa, stunned. The weight of the last year, the hunger, the eviction, notices the double shifts on swollen feet crashed into her. She buried her face in her hands and wept. Julian sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance. I know. Let it out. I just wanted him back, she sobbed. I don't want the money. I just want Liam. I know, Julian whispered, his voice thick with his own grief. But we can't bring him back. All we can do is burn down the things that hurt him. He stood up and checked his watch. Tonight is the gala. Isabella will be there. She thinks she can spin this story. She thinks she can paint you as a crazy stalker and herself as the victim. Sarah looked up, wiping her eyes. She told me I was nothing. She told me I was dirt. Do you want to prove her wrong? Julian asked. Sarah looked at her stomach. She thought about the slap. She thought about the wine soaking her uniform. She thought about Isabella calling her unborn child a mistake. A fire ignited in Sarah's eyes, a cold, steady resolve that reminded Julian so much of his brother. Yes, Sarah said. Good. Julian nodded to the stylists. Get her ready, but not for a party. Get her ready for a coronation. Across town, Isabella was preparing for war. She stood in front of a floor-to-ceiling mirror, screaming at her makeup artist. Too much blush. I need to look pale, you idiot. I need to look distressed. Isabella grabbed a wet wipe and scrubbed her cheek aggressively. I am the victim here. I am the wife of a billionaire who is being targeted by a grifting waitress. I need to look fragile. Yes, Mrs. Thorne. I'm sorry. The artist trembled. Isabella smoothed her hair. She had chosen a black dress, modest, high-necked, almost funereal. It was a masterstroke of manipulation. It suggested penance and dignity. Gareth, she said to the phone on speaker, is the narrative set? It's moving, Gareth said. I've got bots swarming the comments. The story is that Sarah Miller is a mentally unstable ex-employee who has been stalking the Thorne family for months. We're saying she threw the water on you on purpose to provoke a reaction. Perfect. Isabella smiled at her reflection. And the slap. Self-defense. You felt threatened. It's a stretch, but with enough money, people will believe it. And Julian, still ghosting everyone. But he has to show up tonight. He's the keynote speaker. He won't cause a scene, Isabella reasoned, applying a layer of waterproof mascara. Julian cares about the company reputation more than anything. He hates scandal. He'll stand by me, smile for the cameras, and we'll pay the girl off privately tomorrow. She stood up and spun around. She looked elegant, tragic, and untouchable. I am Isabella Thorne, she whispered to herself, and nobody knocks me off my pedestal. The Metropolitan Museum of Art was transformed into a glittering fortress of wealth. A red carpet stretched up the iconic steps, flanked by walls of white roses. Hundreds of photographers screamed the names of celebrities, hedge fund managers, and politicians. The Thorne Foundation Annual Gala. Ticket price $50,000. Limousines arrived in a steady stream. When Isabella's car arrived, the noise level doubled. Isabella, over here. Did you hit her? Is it true she attacked you first? Isabella stepped out. She didn't smile. She looked downcast, clutching a black clutch to her chest like a shield. She walked the carpet slowly, stopping briefly to speak to a reporter from the New York Times, whom she knew was on her payroll. It has been a devastating 24 hours, Isabella said, her voice wavering perfectly. I am a huge supporter of mental health awareness. That poor young woman. She has been obsessed with my husband's family for a long time. I reacted out of fear, and I deeply regret it. We are looking into getting her the help she needs. So the rumors of a dispute are false? The reporter asked. Completely, Isabella sighed. She is a troubled soul. We pray for her. Isabella walked into the great hall satisfied. She had planted the seed. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. The elite of New York sipped champagne, their eyes darting around, whispering. They had all seen the video. They all knew the rumors. But when Isabella entered, the crowd parted. She held her head high, nodding to the wives of bankers and senators. She made her way to the head table where Julian was supposed to be. The seat was empty. Isabella checked her phone. Nothing. Panic began to prick at her skin again. Where is he? The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the room. The host, a famous news anchor, took the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the CEO of Thorn Enterprises, Mr. Julian Thorn. The applause was polite but hesitant. Julian walked out from the side stage. He looked impeccable in a tuxedo, but his face was stone. He didn't wave. He walked straight to the podium. Isabella let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. "He's here. It's fine. He's doing the speech." "Thank you!" Julian's voice boomed through the hall. "Tonight is about legacy." He paused. He looked out into the crowd, scanning the faces, until he locked eyes with Isabella at table 1. Isabella offered him a weak, supportive smile. "We talk about legacy as if it is about money," Julian continued. "Buildings with our names on them, endowments, statues." He reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out the crumpled yellow envelope. Isabella's smile froze. Her blood turned to ice. "But sometimes," Julian said, holding the letter up, "legacy is about the things we destroy to maintain our comfort." The room went silent. You could hear a pin drop. "This is a letter," Julian said, "written by my brother Liam. He wrote it 3 years ago, begging to see me, begging to introduce me to his wife. He wanted me to know he was happy. He wanted to reconcile." Julian's hand shook slightly. "I never got this letter, or the 50 others he wrote." He looked directly at Isabella. The camera crews swiveled their lenses from the podium to her. Her face was a mask of terror. "My wife," Julian said, his voice, dropping to a dangerous register, intercepted every single one. "She told my brother I hated him. She told me he despised me. She engineered a silence that lasted until the day he died." A collective gasp ripped through the room. Whispers exploded. "Oh my God," someone said audibly. Isabella stood up. "Julian, stop," she hissed, though she wasn't wearing a microphone. "You're having a breakdown." "I am not done," Julian roared into the mic. "Yesterday the world saw my wife strike a woman at Legrand." Julian continued. "Isabella told the press tonight that the woman was a stalker, a mentally unstable fan." Julian stepped back from the podium and gestured to the curtain behind him. "I think it is time you meet the stalker." The heavy velvet curtains parted. Sarah walked out. She was unrecognizable from the shivering, stained waitress of the night before. She wore a midnight blue silk gown that draped over her pregnancy with elegance. Her hair was pinned up, revealing her face. She wore no diamonds, no rubies. Around her neck, stark against the expensive silk, was the simple piece of lapis lazuli wrapped in silver wire. The crowd stared. She was breathtaking. Sarah walked to the podium. She was trembling, but she stood tall. Julian moved aside, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. "This," Julian said, "is Sarah Thorn, my brother Liam's widow." The flashbulbs erupted like a supernova. It was blinding. "And she is carrying the sole heir to the Thorn legacy," Julian announced. Isabella felt the room spinning. Her narrative was shattering in real time. The mental patient was standing on stage, looking like a queen endorsed by the king himself. "Isabella," Julian said, his voice amplified, echoing through the vast hall. "You stripped this family of its heart. You abused a pregnant woman because she spilled water on a purse that costs more than she earns in a year." Julian reached under the podium and pulled out a stack of papers. "I have filed for divorce this morning," Julian said calmly. "No," Isabella screamed. "You can't do this here." Julian continued ignoring her. "Since you violated the morality clause of our prenuptial agreement by committing a felony assault on camera, you leave with nothing." "Nothing!" Julian's voice thundered. Security guards, Julian's private security, not the venue's, began to move toward table 1. "Escort Mrs. Thorn out," Julian commanded. "She is trespassing." Isabella looked around. Her friends! Tiffany Clare, the socialites, were literally turning their chairs away from her. The waiter she had snapped at earlier was looking at her with a smirk. "Don't touch me!" Isabella shrieked as a guard grabbed her arm. "Do you know who I am? I am Isabella Thorne." "Not anymore," Sarah spoke. It was the first time Sarah had spoken into the microphone. Her voice was soft, but it carried. Isabella froze. She looked up at the stage, at the waitress she had slapped. "You are just a memory," Sarah said. Isabella lost it. She lunged towards the stage, her composure gone, a feral animal backed into a corner. "You trash, you gutter rat, I'll kill you." 2 more guards grabbed her. She was kicking and screaming, her dress tearing as she was dragged backward. The cameras captured every second of it. The ugly, raw, unfiltered rage. The mask had slipped completely. As she was hauled through the double doors, screaming obscenities, the room returned to a stunned silence. Julian looked at the crowd. He looked at Sarah. He took her hand and raised it. "To Liam," Julian said softly. "To Liam," the crowd murmured in response, raising their glasses, eager to be on the winning side of history. Sarah looked out at the sea of faces. She touched the stone around her neck. She felt the baby kick. She had survived. But the story wasn't quite over yet. Isabella Thorne was gone, but the aftermath of such a public destruction would have ripples. The fall of Isabella Thorne was not a slow decline. It was a vertical drop. In the weeks following the gala, the media cycle was merciless. The clip of her being dragged out of the Met Museum screaming like a banshee while wearing a torn dress was played on every news station from Tokyo to Toronto. The Ice Queen had melted into a puddle of rage, and the world couldn't look away. But the real devastation happened in the quiet, sterile conference rooms of high-priced law firms. 3 weeks after the gala, Isabella sat across from Julian's legal team. She was alone. Her own lawyers had dropped her when the retainer check bounced. Julian had frozen all joint accounts the second he stepped off the stage. "The terms are non-negotiable," Michael Vance, Julian's attorney, said, sliding a thick document across the mahogany table. Isabella looked at the paper. Her hands were shaking. She wasn't wearing makeup. She looked 10 years older. "I want the penthouse, and 5 million in alimony. I gave him the best years of my life." "You gave him nothing but deceit," Michael replied coldly. "You violated the bad faith clause of the prenuptial agreement by actively sabotaging Mr. Thorne's relationship with his brother and committing a violent felony that damaged the Thorne Enterprise brand. You forfeited your right to spousal support." "I'll sue," Isabella whispered, though the fire was gone from her voice. "Go ahead," Michael shrugged. "But you should know that the district attorney is moving forward with the assault charges. The video is damning. Sarah Thorne has decided to press charges. If you sign this today, Julian agrees to advocate for probation instead of prison time. If you fight us, he will spend every penny he has to ensure you sit in a cell." Isabella stared at the pen. She had no friends. She had no money. She had been blacklisted from every social club in the city. Even her friends, Tiffany and Claire, had given interviews calling her a toxic influence. She picked up the pen and signed. With that scratch of ink, she signed away the billions, the status, and the name. She was just Isabella Vance again, a girl from the suburbs who had clawed her way up and fallen all the way back down. 8 months later, the sunlight streamed into the nursery of the Thorne estate in the Hamptons. The room was painted a soft yellow, filled with books and toys. Sarah sat in a rocking chair, exhausted, but glowing. In her arms slept a 3-week-old boy. He had a tuft of black hair and his father's nose. "He's finally asleep." Sarah looked up. Julian stood in the doorway. He looked different these days. The harsh lines around his mouth had softened. He wore a cashmere sweater and jeans, looking less like a titan of industry and more like a man at peace. "Out like a light," Sarah smiled. "He has Liam's energy, though. He kicks even when he's sleeping." Julian walked over and looked down at the infant. He reached out a finger, and the baby's tiny hand instinctively curled around it. "William," Julian whispered. "William Liam Thorne." "Do you think he would have liked the name?" Sarah asked softly. "Liam would have said it was too fancy." Julian laughed. "He would have called him Billy or Ace just to annoy me. But he would have been so proud, Sarah." "You have no idea." Julian reached into his pocket. "I have something for you. Consider it a late push present." He handed her a small velvet box. Sarah opened it. Inside was not a diamond nor a ruby. It was a key. An old brass key. "What is this?" "It's the key to the old studio," Julian said. "The garage where Liam and I started. I bought the property back. I turned it into an art centre. The Liam Thorne Foundation for Young Artists. It opens next week. I want you to run it." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Julian, I don't know anything about running a foundation." "You know how to survive," Julian said firmly. "And you know what it's like to have talent but no resources. You are the only person who can run it." He paused, his expression turning serious. "And there is one more thing. We received a letter today." Sarah tensed. "From her?" "No." Julian shook his head grimly. "From a diner in New Jersey, a place called Big Ed's Burgers." Julian pulled out a crumpled photo. "Someone recognized their new waitress." Sarah took the photo. It was grainy, taken from a cell phone. It showed a woman in a stained orange polyester uniform, wiping down a greasy table. Her hair was frizzy, pulling out of a hairnet. She looked tired. She looked miserable. It was Isabella. "She's working double shifts," Julian said. "Living in a motel nearby. Apparently the manager shouts at her when she's too slow." Sarah stared at the image. The woman who had treated her like an insect, who had looked at her pregnant belly with disgust, was now standing in her shoes. The karmic circle was complete. "Do you want me to have her fired?" Julian asked quietly. "I can buy the building. I can have her on the street by tonight." Sarah looked at the baby sleeping in her arms. She looked at the peace in the room. She remembered the rage she used to feel the burning desire for revenge. But looking at Isabella now broken and humbled by the universe, Sarah felt something else. Indifference. "No," Sarah said, handing the photo back. "Let her work. She needs the tips." Julian smiled. It was a genuine, warm smile. "You are a better person than I am, Sarah." "No," Sarah said, kissing her son's forehead. "I just have everything I ever wanted. She has exactly what she deserves." Sarah looked out the window. The storm that had brought her here had passed. The rain had stopped, and for the first time in a long time, the future looked bright, clear, and full of love. The waiter had become the queen, and the queen had become the servant. And in the silence of the nursery, the only sound was the steady rhythmic breathing of the next generation of Thorne safe and loved. And that is the story of how a single act of cruelty unraveled a life of privilege. Isabella thought her wealth was a shield, but she forgot that true power doesn't come from what you have in your bank account. It comes from how you treat people when you think no one is watching. She struck a pregnant waitress and lost a kingdom. Sarah showed grace and gained a family. It's a reminder to all of us. Be careful who you step on while you're climbing the ladder, because you might just meet them on your way down. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and justice, please hit that. Like button it really helps the channel. And if you want to see more stories where the arrogant get what they deserve, subscribe and turn on notifications. Let me know in the comments, do you think Sarah should have taken revenge on Isabella at the end, or was leaving her to her miserable life, the ultimate punishment type, karma, if you think she got what she deserved? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.